adjusting in the box due to box's small size. So her husband dismembers her both feet. And he begins to leave through an elevator, adjusting the dismembered feet in the box. But the elevator is stopped at once. The blood begins to flow from that box. The whole elevator is filled with the blood. That lady's husband is much scared because of this happening. And he tries to unlock the elevator's door to come outside from there. At the same time, his neighbor arrives there. So she calls the police to assist that man and to free him from the elevator. Then the elevator is activated and it was moving downward. Then that man looks outside. Then he begins to recall all past moments spent with his wife. Immediately, that box is unlocked. That lady's demon moves to its husband, coming out from there. But it is known that it was just the hallucinations of that man. There was nothing happening as such. Because he was facing trauma due to the hypertension. Police had also found that dead-bodied box, approaching there. And that man is sent to psychiatric hospital. Sam also interests in this story. Sam says to Dark, "Your all-told stories are fascinating and fabulous. Above all stories are didactic. It means, as you sow so shall you reap." After this, Dark leads Sam to the sub-basement. And the Sam tells about herself before Dark. She tells Dark, "I did not visit here as to be appointed for a job. But I have come here for that child placed in the coffin. Who has recently died. She tells that I am guilty for the death of this child. She tells Dark of her story. She tells that I was the caretaker of this child. And the parents of that child were not at home that day. They had left a voicemail message for Sam. As she can cook anything if she feels appetite. Where Sam is cooking meat for her. But TV broadcasts a news that a few patients have escaped from the psychiatric hospital. Then Sam notices a wounded man in that house. Sam assists that man. Knowing about this news, she suspects that man. Either he has escaped from the psychiatric hospital. So she crushes his hand, putting it into the electric meat grinder. There is great fight held between that man and Sam. And Sam loses her consciousness because of this fight. Then that man begins to move to the room of that child. Coming into senses, Sam also goes there. Where the fight again begins between Sam and that man. During this duel, that man falls down from the stairs. Then Sam says to man, approaching there, "You are lunatic who have spoiled my dinner." Saying it, she drops the TV on his head. As a result, his head is squashed. After a time, the parents of that kid arrive there. They are left surprised, witnessing that man. They are also scared. Because that man was not anyone else, but the warden of their kid. Because Sam was not the caretaker of that kid. But Sam was a psycho patient. And she was one of them, who had fled from the psychiatric hospital. Then the parents of that kid notices, that kid is also missing from there. They try hard to search for their kid everywhere. But they find him nowhere. Opening the door of oven, they are left dumbed. Because Sam was cooking the meat of their kid, not the other thing. Here it is revealed that Sam was actually a serial killer. She was not a stable-minded. And she was not only the serial killer, but also a cannibal. Capturing the kids, she used to dissect the kids and eat. After them, she used to keep their one tooth of each, as a memory. So she was not able to grab the tooth of that child. So she had visited this funeral home to take the tooth of that kid. Where Sam also stabs Dark, using a knife. But Dark begins to cackle. And the surprising fact is this. There was not any bleeding where the knife had been stabbed. But the sticky liquid was releasing from there. Sam is afraid, witnessing it, she begins to flee from there. But Sam had entrapped in the funeral home now. She tries enough to escape, but all in vain. It was appearing as that funeral home had taken the form of Maze. Dark had done it, not anyone else. Afterwards, Sam enters a library, where Dark taunts her, "My daughter. It is just the beginning. Just look. What would happen next?" Saying it, Dark begins to fall some of the books there. And there were the stories of those kids in those books, who had been mutilated by Sam, while all those children were guiltless. Then the demons of those kids begin to come out of those books. All demons of kids capture Sam and begin to eat. After this, Dark infuses the same sticky liquid into the body of Sam. Afterwards, he stitches her body later. Doing so, Dark also leaves the funeral home. Coming outside, Dark vanishes, turning into the ashes. Here it is also known here that Dark was not a human, but demon of Dark. Then it is seen that Sam has awakened in the funeral home. It means that Sam is going to run this funeral home collection after dark. After this, the current time is seen where Sam was telling the same story to that child, who was shown at the start of the movie distributing the newspaper. That child is scared from Sam and says to her, "I am going to the house and I am getting late." Sam says to him, "Why are you hurrying to return home? We have to prepare the dinner yet, and we have to dine together." And the movie completes here with the spoken words of Sam.